Shut up and sit down.
Hi guys, this is Bigmeks Workshop and Paint Studio. I'm Dodge, and today we're going to be learning how to paint the Blood Angels for the Primaris models. I know we're a bit late to the party for this one. The reason for that is Andy did do a bunch of Primaris in Iron Warriors? No, Imperial Fists, sorry. And the footage was not good enough, and some of it was lost, so we just didn't upload that video. So we're doing Blood Angels. We've started with the basic black primer by Vallejo, and now I'm going to be using the German red primer from Vallejo to start building up a hot spots and layers. If you try this and you're new to airbrushing, just you could pretty much just go at a 45-degree angle with your airbrush for this and get most of the areas, but I like to keep a bit more control, put more hot spots in and more detail. As you can see, those layers are slowly building up on those areas. We want to leave a little bit of the black showing. You can do this with a brush as well, guys. Shouldn't be too difficult, it'll just be glazing. But you might want to change the colours a bit. And yes, that is German yellow primer I'm sticking on the top of the red there. This is going to act as a pre-highlight and make the reds that we put on afterwards stand out even more. You want to be quite sparing with this. I've got my PSI turned down a lot on the airbrush. As you can see, airbrush gives a lovely smooth layer for this sort of armour. It gives a lovely smooth layer on most things actually, but on this armour you can see it really starts to build up those bright spots. I've obviously highlighted the knees, the end of the feet, end of the toes, and backpack, shoulder pads where most of the light will hit. But I've not really gone for a zenithal highlighting, it's a general all-round highlighting. Now the red we're going to put on is by Model Air, so it goes through the airbrush nice and easy. And this is going to be watered down a lot and put on in a couple of layers. And when you're using this colour, you want to be aiming to just cover all the yellow. The overspray will cover the black and tone it all together anyway. So that's sort of two jobs done in one. As you can see, that's given a lovely rich red colour, and then we've got the really dark colours there as a contrast at the bottom and then all the underneath parts. I can't take all the credit for this tutorial. The actual paint scheme here, at the moment I'm just blacking these out by the way in Vallejo black primer. The actual paint scheme I got from someone on Daka when I first started doing commissions. I got a photo of some Blood Angels and the guy asked, can I do these? So I went on Daka and asked if anyone knew the artist, and bumped into him and he told me how he did these. So I've been doing Blood Angels like this ever since. So I don't know the guy's name, but credit to that guy, credit where credit's due. It's a really nice scheme. Now this is metallic black by Model Air, and you'll see us using this a lot in videos now. It's one of our favourite colours. It just goes on so smooth because it's an airbrush paint, and gives a lovely nice coating. Now for the leather for this, I always prefer to do the Dryad bark. It's sort of a rich reddish leather, so it'll complement everything else. I mean, you could use a tan sort of leather if you wanted to, but I find this particular colour goes really well with this Blood Angel style. Now to do the aquilas and all the other sigils, we're going to be using Games Workshop Brass Scorpion. That's going to take a couple of coats, because when you're doing aquilas there's a lot of recesses there, you don't want to fill those with paint, and I know Games Workshop metallics tend to clump up and aren't much fun, or you water them down and they just like glitter in a puddle, but just do a few layers of that and that'll start picking up. I'm just using a medium or small brush here, but I will use a Winsor Newton later on to neaten up those edges. To start picking out some more of the colours here, I'm using Bugman's Glow by Games Workshop very lightly over the face, because decided I might leave some of that red tone showing on the underneath. I mean, if you wanted to, you could mask all the head off or cover it in blue tack while doing the airbrushing, but I've never found that necessary while doing this paint scheme. Obviously this is really watered down, going over all the highlighted areas first to make sure they're defined. Now for the sigils, seals and other random bits for your Blood Angel army, I'd recommend using Steel Legion Drab as a base. That's just because I know that when it's finished it'll match this colour scheme really well. You could start with a Xandri Dust if you really wanted to, but we're going to do other parts of the model from Xandri Dust up, so it's really up to you how you paint these extra bits, but this is just the way I prefer to do it. Now as always I'm highlighting my Dryad bark with gothel brown. You can see that's really watered down, and I'm just pulling from the centre towards the edges. It's just really, it's really just coloured water more than anything, and that's going to take a few layers there. If you keep your paints watered down a lot, you're going to get much better results. 2 thin coats is good, but if you want to go for 3 or 4, you'll start seeing, you know, your work's a lot better. Cadian Flesh Tone is then used to start picking out features of the face. I usually start with the most pronounced features. The reason for that is as I go to the next feature, I've used up some of that paint, and you're going to keep less paint on your brush doing it that way. Obviously this is really sped up because doing faces and skin tone takes quite a lot of time. Again, it's really watered down paint. It's pretty much just glazing this on with the Winsor Newton Series 7. You know, water your paint down, wipe most of it off the brush, and then use it. Now to pick out some of the details on the Aquila, we're going to use the Rune Lord Brass by Games Workshop. You could use an overbrush technique for this, but I prefer to just paint them individually, keeping control of it a little bit more. You only want to hit the top areas of the Aquila really, and bring those all the way out to the sides, because we're going to put a wash on that later. Then we're going back to the flesh, and I'm going to use Kislev flesh. Again, same technique, really watered down, but you can see because it's watered down and I'm putting on very small amounts, that face is really starting to pop out now. Trying to get the camera to focus. Again, I start with the brow, back of the ears, top of the ears, sorry, and the cheekbones, and then use whatever's left on the brush to start picking out the other features. It's a really good technique to keep your paint the right consistency and the right amount on your brush. I'm using Morning Fang Brown to paint the hair, and that's because one of the other colours I'm going to use for it will make the hair look blonde when I'm done, and again it will add to that sort of red palette that we're using. I've done them in white before, which you can do, or just black if you really want to, but at the moment we've got a Ginger Space Marine. We will use Xandri Dust to start picking out the skulls on the armour. And because that's a base, we're just going to do a couple of layers on these skulls. Try not to fill in the eyeballs too much or the teeth. Keep your paint watered down. But obviously these details are very small and that can be quite difficult to do. So once you're aware of it, just take your time. Then we're going to add a Agrax Earthshade wash. See, we did the skull first so we can do this whole lot in one sitting and then wait for it to dry. Now this is watered down considerably. As you can see, it's starting to sit immediately in the recesses of the Aquila and bring out the Rune Lord Brass and Brass Scorpion. I think a lot of people go over the top with the washes, water it down, and if it's not the strong enough colour by the time it's dried, just do another watered down layer. Now Requiem Flesh Shade wash has been watered down considerably, and I'm using a Winsor Newton to put that just into the recesses. Now obviously it will travel around a little bit and get in places. At this point I got a bit of a pooling in the eye socket, but you just dry your brush, poke it in there, and it will absorb all that wash. Now I've done that, it's time to highlight the Kislev flesh even more. I use Kislev flesh to highlight the face even more. But as you can see, that wash has added more depth to those recesses, and you can see it really becoming pronounced now. I think in all it's only 4 colours I use for the face. You just want to focus on the parts that stick out the most and will catch the light. So that's your eyebrows, your nose, your cheekbones. Now this is a game colour paint, and it's called Terra Earth. It's supposed to be a brown, but a lot of the time you put it on things, it starts to go a blondish yellow. And I started using that to do hair and things like that, and I've been using it ever since. All we're doing here is following the actual sculpt of the hair, starting the strands of hair that way, and then adding extra bits of hair in. What we'll do is we'll do that really watered down. I know it looks quite vibrant at the moment, but it'll dry quite pale, and then add other layers, not over the top, but in different directions over it, and that's gonna sort of give a patchwork effect of layers of hair. Now to pick out even more details on the Aquila, we're going to use Syrax bronze. And this is just a very small amount on the tips of the feathers for the Aquila and the top bits of the Aquila. Now to go over our dryad bark, we're going to use Carrot Stone, and we're going to pull that from the shaded area all the way to the bits that are most pronounced. As you can see, this particular sergeant's got a fold on his Aquila, so we're going to paint the top of that fold, miss the next bit, and then paint the other fold. And that'll give the model and the seal some depth. Caliban green was used for the sigils. That's a good base coat. The green's going to complement all the reds and other warm palette that we've been using. It will make them stand out enough as well. I mean, you could use blue if you wanted to, but that's a contrast colour. It might look a bit too bright. It's really up to you. I used to like doing them in purples. Now we're going to do a Xandri dust coat on the skulls again. Same way we do the face, we're just going to pick out the top of the skull, the nose bone and the cheekbones, and try and get some of those teeth as well. Obviously the teeth are probably the most difficult bit. Now we're going to use Wazdaka Red by Games Workshop for our first edge highlight. And with the way this arm is built, there is a lot of edges to do. But it's worth taking your time over it and just using the edge of your brush where you can. I can't recommend the Winsor Newton Series 7 enough for edge highlighting. It just has so much control that makes the job seem really easy. Now once we're done with that and we've got some nice vibrant reds, we're going to add Rakhar flesh into the mix and keep this watered down, but instead of doing all the lines now, we're going to start picking out the corners and the most light parts. Anything that we started with where the airbrush hit in the beginning and we made really bright, that's where most of these highlights are going to go. And this is still very time consuming. Now Sick Green by Game Air was used to highlight the Caliban green, but you could always use Games Workshop Strachan green. It's pretty much the same colour. We just want some strong contrast and highlight to the centre of the sigil, so we're going to go around the outer edge with the Sick Green. Now for the rest of the seal, we're going to put down a coat of Agrax Earthshade to blend the Carrot Stone and Dryad Bark together. And make sure you get round the back of that sigil as well. It's easy to miss. Just work it into all those recessed areas. Now the utility belt he's got, I wasn't sure what this front part was, so I decided to just make it stand out and be a little bit different. Started with a warp block bronze. I thought he's got all these leather backpacks, maybe we'll have a something metal like a grenade holder or something. I'm not sure what it is. If you do know what it is, let us know in the comments. And more Agrax Earthshade wash is applied to the rest of the leather parts. Going for the centre of all the parts now, working from the outer edge inwards, and that's going to blend that gothel brown and dryad bark even more. Again, you want to be sparing with this wash, you don't want it running off onto all the rest of the work that you've just done. Then to add a tiny highlight to the top of the sigils, we're going to take sick green and add a tiny bit of moot green to it. Again, if you haven't got the sick green, you can just use Strachan green by Games Workshop. Then I'm going to use Rune Lord Brass over the Warp Block Bronze, because that's going to make it stand out a bit, and I can use that over the Warp Block Bronze without it looking too similar to the Aquila because of the base coat of Warp Block Bronze. Now we're going to go back and re-highlight the sigils for the last time in the top corners, and that's using Carrick Stone again, really watered down. As you can see, they've started to gather some movement now. If you want to, you can put words and writing along them, or whatever it is you want to put on there. But we've got a lot of these to do in the studio, so I'm not going to bother with that at the moment. Now Ashen Grey is going to be used as our black edge highlight, which is a pretty simple step. It's what Games Workshop would recommend, because it does work really well. It's a very simple plain grey, and we're going to use that mainly on the gun because we want to keep the gun black so it stands out from everything else. Then we're going to add a little bit of Dawnstone to the Ashen Grey and start picking out the main corners of the guns and any of the black parts. Then it's just a case of touching those bits and pieces up there, and then going around the model looking for anything that you've missed and want to touch up with another highlight colour. Then I'm going to just, like, when I was looking around, I found that I wanted to highlight the satchels and the holsters a little bit more, so I used Gothel Brown again as an edge highlight for those. And once you're done with that, well, this model, because of the way it's been painted, will be using a pin wash. So I will be spraying it in gloss varnish, using an oil pin wash with odorless terps to bring out those details, and then we're going to spray it with matte to seal all that in, and then spray it with a satin because that'll bring all those colours back up, because we don't want to lose those vibrant reds. And there you go guys, that's it. One Space Marine Blood Angels Primaris all painted up, and thanks for watching. I hope this helps you with your Primaris Marines. I hope you liked the video. If you do, hit like, hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one guys.